as opposed to having to redesign their application. And we continue to make the testing and the standards better and better, and we continue to make the conformance of it better and better. So we invite people to join in this free standards effort to be able to say, well, these are the interfaces that are important to me, and therefore these are the interfaces that we standardize on next. Now, the difference between having a standard like that and having a single distribution allows somebody to innovate in the things that are not important to the ISVs, that are not important to the application vendors, but are important to end users, such as the ease of installation, such as the ease of graphical systems administration, such as how you package up the software to fit on a system, whether it's going to be a scientific system or whether it's going to be a business system or whether it's going to be a general purpose system. We still do not know what is the perfect system, and therefore we still need to have, we need the ability to innovate inside of that. And we also need competition, so that if one vendor decides, well, I'm going to change the way I license my software, you can go to another vendor and know that the things that are important to you, your investment in your applications and your investment in your training for your people are protected, but yet you still can have leverage over the vendors in how much they charge for their software and how much they charge for their services.
So you're saying that certain vendors are perhaps taking on a proprietary mindset with regards to locking in certain users using their distro versus others?
That's possible whenever you don't have that type of a setup. Whenever you say that is a particular distribution which is a standard, what we call a de facto standard, simply because it has the largest volume. Okay? If you say instead that the standard is actually a written standard which every vendor can then meet and provide, then that guarantees the customer that they're not going to be locked into a particular vendor.
Would you say that perhaps in the Linux and open source community there is a problem with regards to finding a standard?
I don't think that there's a problem with regards to finding a standard, because in reality most of the Linux distributions use the same source code tree of the kernel and a lot of the other applications at the same time. The question is, when do the different distributions deliver that particular code to the end user customer, and in what organization? I believe that what the LSB is trying to do is to say that any given point in time, if you deliver a certain set of functionality to the end user and to the ISV, then you will be able to meet that standard and the applications will run. It's not an issue of how the different libraries do their work. It's the issue of exactly what work do the libraries do and at what time, and what functionality and what features does the application need at any given period of time. And if you lock that in, if you say at a particular period of time, this is the functionalities needed, then you can go ahead and standardize on that. But that still gives plenty of room for the community to say, we can make the library faster, we can make it smaller, use up less memory, we can make it more robust, it breaks fewer times. You know, all these different things are actually innovations that are very valuable to people.
If you get software for free, then how does the development of that software get paid for?
Well, there's a variety of reasons why people write free software, and I like to relate this back to our artist friends, which I mentioned. A lot of times people write free software because they say, I need the software myself in what I do. And because I do not have a business of selling this particular type of software, why shouldn't I give it away to somebody else who could also use it? The next thing they say is, well, if I'm going to give it away to somebody who can also use it, maybe this person can also help me improve it. And if I do it all myself, well, then I have to do all the work myself. But if I allow other people to help me improve it, I may only have to do a small portion of the work, and maybe the work that I don't like doing, the other people find very satisfying and very interesting. And so as a community, you actually produce better and more software than you do as only an individual. A friend of mine who was a systems administrator for a large company said that he would go home at night, sit on the couch beside his wife, and sit there and write little shell scripts and programs that would help him do his job. He would then send them out to the free software community. The next day he would go into work and find that 10,000 other people had been doing the same thing. And he said to me that this is an amplifier of what I can do, because if I had to do all this by myself, I would never get it done. The third reason why people might write free software is because they want to improve their capabilities of writing software. And by writing software and exposing it to all sorts of other people who are experts, they get feedback on how well they write software. They also write it because they may get recognition. Certainly a lot of the free software people have been asked to go around the world and talk to people about the software projects that they've started or that they're working on. And so they get recognition from their peers as to how good their software is and how many people are using it. And you could compare this to the artist taking their piece of art down to an art show and having it graded or commented on by other artists. Finally, there are people who say, well, I'm a consultant or I'm working for a large company, and the fact that I write this free software gives me recognition inside of the programming community, and perhaps somebody will hire me to do a job. Or maybe somebody says, I like your software, but I don't really understand how to use it to its maximum, so would you come in to my company and let me pay you a couple days of consulting so that you can tell my people how to use it better. Or I like your software and I would like to have this new thing added to it, and you probably will add it in your own time, but if I pay you money, you can add it in my time, the time that is necessary for me to have this new feature. And this is a lot of what the larger companies are doing currently to a lot of the free software. They say, yes, we understand that maybe in 2 years this new feature will go in, but if we pay you to do it, we get it in our time frame, and then we can utilize this free software to do business for ourselves. So there's a lot of reasons. And finally, some of the larger companies, such as IBM and Hewlett-Packard, they used to produce their own Unix systems, their own operating systems, and this might cost them anywhere between $200 and $300 million a year to have the number of engineers necessary to do this. They found out that by using Linux and open source, they could go in and basically get the same operating system, but the number of engineers which they have to have are significantly reduced. And at most, they need some engineers to make sure that the operating system works well on their particular piece of hardware. So they hire an open source developer such as, I won't mention any names, but they hire somebody and put them on their staff. And it's basically an inexpensive way of having a really good operating system. Make sure that it fits your hardware. And they allow the person, of course, to do work for the rest of the open source community, which the open source community greatly appreciates. So these are some of the ways you can make money.
What is your opinion on the SCO case against Linux?
I think that after, I don't know how many years of this, I've lost track of SCO trying to make the case that some of their code is actually in Linux or that they own something of Linux. And every time they try and hold up some piece of code and say, look, this is our code. And the Linux and the free and open source community kind of laughs at them and says, no, this is where it came from. And if anything, SCO took that code from Linux. I don't even think about it anymore. It's just something that has to grind its way through the courts. I think that if SCO is not very